Let's try a little experiment. You step out onto a street in a random American state and stop 50 people. Nationally, about 1 in 7 people is foreign born. But if that street were in West Virginia, you would have to stop exactly 50 people to find a single person not born on American soil. Just one person out of 50. And that is no accident. It is the result of a chain of causes deeper than anyone might imagine. A story that starts with geography, passes through coal, overcomes tragic migrations, and ends in a modern paradox that no other state in America faces in quite the same way. West Virginia is the last state on the list, 50th out of 50 states for the percentage of its foreign-born population. And this is not a new title. It has held that spot for many consecutive years. So, why has a state right in the heart of America, less than a 2-hour drive from the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., become a place where immigrants are nearly non-existent? The answer is not as simple as you think. And when you understand it, you will see that the story of West Virginia is not just the story of one state, but a mirror reflecting the entire history of America. First, let the numbers speak for themselves. The entire immigrant population of West Virginia in total is only about 37,000 people. 37,000 people, that number could fill a medium-sized football stadium with thousands of seats still left empty. Meanwhile, just in neighbouring Virginia, a single county, Fairfax County, has around 350,000 foreign-born residents. One county has 10 times the total immigrant population of the entire state of West Virginia. You only need to drive 20 minutes across the state line to witness the percentage of foreign-born residents skyrocket from nearly 0 to 1/3 of the surrounding population. It is one of the sharpest demographic divides in the entire United States. If you look at a map of the United States, West Virginia is nestled among its neighbouring states like Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Kentucky. Administratively, it is not remote, but geographically, it is a completely different story. West Virginia is the only state in the entire United States that lies completely within the service area of the Appalachian Regional Commission. In other words, the state's entire area is part of Appalachia, an ancient mountain region covered by rugged ranges, narrow valleys, and winding roads that cut through the most challenging terrain in the eastern United States. The Appalachians formed over 300 million years ago, and they have shaped the destiny of this land in a way that no political map could ever change. No large cities, no seaports, no international borders, no major international airport. Charleston, the state capital, has only about 48,000 residents. Huntington, the second largest city, has even fewer. Not a single city in the entire state of West Virginia ranks among the top 150 largest metropolitan areas in the United States. And that matters much more than you might think, because immigrants do not just randomly fly into the middle of the mountains. They go to places with international airports, with communities of their fellow countrymen, with jobs. West Virginia does not have any of those things on a large enough scale to be a draw. The nearest airports of international significance, Dulles International, Reagan National, Baltimore Washington International, are all located in other states. An immigrant family that has just flown into Washington, D.C. is not likely to just get in a car and drive another 2 hours crossing the Appalachian Mountains to settle in a place where they know no one and there is no community to welcome them. They will stay put. They will find their fellow countrymen, and that circle continues to close with West Virginia on the outside. But geography is only the beginning. To truly understand this story, you have to go back in time. More than a century ago, West Virginia was a destination for immigrants. Not a lot, but some. When the coal industry boomed in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the coal mines in the Appalachian region drew in thousands of labourers from Italy, Hungary, Slovakia, Poland, and many other Eastern European countries. They didn't come here for the mountain scenery, they came for the work. Because back then, coal was America's black gold, and West Virginia was one of the biggest gold mines. Even Senator Joe Manchin, one of the most famous politicians to ever come from the state, has ancestors who came from Italy and Czechoslovakia to work as miners. But despite that small wave of immigration, West Virginia still lagged significantly behind the rest of the country. In 1900, while the nation as a whole recorded about 14% of its population as foreign-born, West Virginia only reached a few percentage points. It never really caught up with the great wave of immigration America was experiencing at that time. Pennsylvania, with its steel mills in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, drew in immigrants by the hundreds of thousands. West Virginia got a small fraction of that, enough to fill the coal mines, but not enough to form large, lasting communities. Then, after World War II, everything changed completely. And it wasn't a change for the better. In the late 1940s, the coal mining industry in Appalachia faced a quiet but devastating technological revolution. New continuous mining machines could extract coal many times faster than teams of manual labourers. Automated roof support technology reduced the required number of labourers tenfold. In the blink of an eye, what once required thousands of hands now only needed a few dozen machines. The jobs vanished. Not gradually, but as quickly as flipping a light switch. By the 1950s, the once bustling coal towns no longer had work to offer. And when the jobs dried up, people left. Thousands, and then tens of thousands, of young people packed their belongings into cars, left the mountains they knew, and headed north, headed east to Ohio, to Washington, D.C., to anywhere there was still opportunity. This was one of the largest internal migrations in American history, and one that is rarely mentioned. It wasn't foreigners coming in, it was its own people leaving, and that left a wound that has yet to heal to this day. West Virginia's population peaked in 1950 at about 2 million people. From that point on, the number began to fall. Slowly at first, then faster and faster. Between 1990 and 2010, while the entire United States grew by 24%, West Virginia grew by only 3.3%. Then the next decade was even worse. The state lost about 3.2% of its population, which was nearly 59,000 people. West Virginia was the only state to experience a significant population decline in the 2020 census. And as a direct result, the state lost one of its 3 seats in the US House of Representatives, going from 3 congressional districts down to 2. Now, let's ask the question in reverse. Why didn't immigrants come to West Virginia as the local population was leaving? It should have been an opportunity to fill the void. The answer lies in a vicious cycle that economists call a recession trap. When the population declines, businesses are hesitant to invest because the market is shrinking. When there's no new investment, there are no new jobs. When there are no jobs, immigrants don't come. When immigrants don't come, the population continues to age and shrink. And so the cycle continues, getting a little tighter with each turn. West Virginia's traditional industries, coal, steel, chemicals, have either shrunk to shadows of their former selves or have become so automated that they barely need people anymore. Modern coal mining relies on giant machines instead of the thousands of manual labourers of the last century. And West Virginia has never developed new industries capable of attracting skilled immigrants. There are no major tech companies. No multinational corporations are headquartered here. West Virginia is the only state without a single company on the Fortune 500, the list of the 500 largest businesses in America. Not a single one. Compare that to neighbouring Virginia. Fairfax County and the high-tech belt around the Dulles Corridor are where Amazon, Microsoft, Capital One, and dozens of federal contractors have offices, all of which regularly recruit foreign professionals. Maryland has biotechnology companies and federal laboratories. Ohio has large manufacturing plants and a strong university system. In this picture, West Virginia seems like it's standing outside a party, looking in through the window. Another factor that's often overlooked is industrial agriculture. In states like Iowa, Nebraska, or Arkansas, which are very rural, there are still significant immigrant populations because their large-scale farm systems and meat processing plants need migrant labour. Those states look beyond their borders and actively recruit workers. West Virginia has no equivalent industrial agriculture sector. The rugged, mountainous terrain is simply not suitable for developing large-scale farms. It's another reason, one more broken link in the chain that pulls the state further from the demographic flow of America. Income is also part of the story. West Virginia consistently ranks near the bottom for median household income among states, only occasionally outperforming Mississippi for last place. Meanwhile, neighbouring Maryland and Virginia rank in the nation's top 10, with median incomes often exceeding $85,000 to $95,000 per year. A tech engineer from India looking at a map of opportunities wouldn't take long to decide. Would they go to Northern Virginia or West Virginia? The answer is almost always obvious. And so this aging, shrinking, and quiet state just continues to watch from the sidelines. Universities are also one of the most important immigration pathways that many people overlook. International students come to study and then stay to work. Ohio State has over 60,000 students with a significant international population. Penn State, Carnegie Mellon, and the University of Pennsylvania serve as gateways for thousands of future scientists, engineers, and entrepreneurs. West Virginia University in Morgantown is the state's flagship school, but it only has a total of about 26,000 students, and its international student population is relatively small. Morgantown is actually the city with the highest percentage of foreign-born residents in the state at nearly 5%, but that number is still far below the national average. And then there's the most invisible yet powerful factor, social networks. Immigrants don't venture into unfamiliar territory alone. They follow in the footsteps of relatives, acquaintances, and fellow villagers. They go to places where an established community of their countrymen is ready to welcome them, where there are stores selling familiar foods, where there are temples or churches for their faith. Edison, New Jersey, has a large Indian community. Herndon, Virginia has enough South Asian restaurants and Asian supermarkets for a family from Mumbai to feel less like strangers. West Virginia has no Little India, no Chinatown. There is no Latino community large enough to create a magnetic pull. And when there is no community to receive them, new arrivals choose to go elsewhere. The absence of immigrants itself creates a reason for their continued absence. It's a demographic feedback loop that is almost perfectly closed. Today, West Virginia's population is about 92% white. The majority of families have deep local roots stretching back for generations. Only about 0.8% of native-born West Virginians have at least one immigrant parent, compared to the national average of nearly 15%. This is the state with the lowest percentage of people who speak a language other than English at home in the US, at only about 2.6%. Those numbers paint a portrait of a community so homogenous, it's rarely seen in any other state in the 21st century. Interestingly, despite its very small size, the immigrant community in West Virginia is exceptionally diverse in its origins. No single ethnic group forms a majority. About 32% come from Asia, 29% from Europe, and 31% from Latin America. That's completely different from the national picture, where Mexicans alone make up nearly 25% of the total immigrant population in the US. In West Virginia, you might find only a dozen Pakistani families in the entire state, or about 50 Vietnamese households in total. That diversity of origin, paradoxically, makes it harder to build specific communities, because each group is too small to create its own vibrant cultural space. The Parkersburg and Vienna area in West Virginia once recorded the lowest foreign-born population rate among all metropolitan areas in the United States, at only about 0.9 to 8%. That's almost 1 in 100 people. Meanwhile, Miami has an immigrant population rate of nearly 42%. The two couldn't be further apart. But here's the part that's rarely talked about. While many politicians in West Virginia voice concerns about the dangers of illegal immigration, the paradox is that the state is stuck in a demographic crisis that immigrants could help solve. From 2020 to 2023, West Virginia recorded about 34,000 more deaths than births, Its death rate is among the highest in the nation. The average age of its residents, around 43, is one of the highest in the country, behind only Maine and Florida. Schools are closing or merging because there aren't enough students. Rural hospitals are facing severe shortages of doctors and nurses, with a vacancy rate in the healthcare sector of nearly 20%. And here's a detail that no one can deny. The immigrants living in West Virginia, though few in number, are working more and more effectively than the native-born population. About 65% of immigrants participate in the labour force, compared to only 54% of those born here. More than half of immigrant workers hold high-level professional positions in medicine, engineering and academia. If you walk into a rural hospital or a university in West Virginia, there's a high chance you'll meet a doctor or professor who was born abroad, often from India, Pakistan or African countries. Doctors who graduated from foreign medical schools are serving communities that American doctors often don't want to go to. They are indispensable, yet they are almost invisible in the overall picture. There's a quote from a local journalist in West Virginia that's worth deep consideration. He wrote that finding an immigrant in rural West Virginia is as rare as finding a coal miner in Manhattan. Both exist, but they are few and far between. And that comparison contains the entire tragedy of this state. A place built on the sweat of miners is now lacking the very labour it needs to survive. The fate of West Virginia is therefore a closed circle of paradox. There are no immigrants because there are no jobs. There are no jobs because there's no investment. There's no investment because the population is declining. The population is declining because young people are leaving. Young people are leaving because there's no future. And there's no future because no new people are arriving to bring energy and opportunities. It's a spiral with no clear beginning or end, only the quiet continuation of decline. Meanwhile, the rest of America is changing in the complete opposite direction. The foreign-born population rate nationwide has increased from about 11% in 2000 to nearly 15% today. Waves of immigrants are pouring into North Carolina to work in poultry plants, into Atlanta to serve the tech hubs, and into Columbus, Ohio to become part of the second largest Somali community in America. America is becoming more diverse, more multi-ethnic, and more multicultural with each passing decade. West Virginia, however, remains almost frozen in an older demographic era, like a black and white photograph in a world that has turned to colour. Imagine this. If the entire United States had an immigrant population proportional to West Virginia's, the total number of foreign-born people nationwide would only be around 6 to 7 million. That's roughly the number of immigrants living in the Los Angeles metropolitan area alone, just one city, equal to the entire immigrant population of a West Virginia-style America. However, there are small signs that the state is beginning to see reality differently. Some community leaders have started to openly say what was once rarely spoken aloud, that West Virginia needs more West Virginians, and immigrants can become West Virginians. A 2019 report indicated that, although small, the growth in the immigrant population has helped slow the state's population decline. Even increasing the rate from 2% to 4% over time could inject tens of thousands of new residents with youthful energy and needed skills. Could that happen in the next 20 years? The answer depends on things even harder than geography and economics. It depends on mindset, on will, and on the ability to look beyond the familiar mountains to find the future. Because, in the end, West Virginia's geography hasn't changed. The Appalachian Mountains will still be there. The narrow valleys will still be there. But history has proven that even the greatest geographical barriers are not permanent when people decide to change. Today, West Virginia still stands in last place, 50th out of 50, in every metric related to immigrants, from green cards to refugees, from temporary visas to asylum applications, from naturalization to international students. West Virginia consistently ranks at the very bottom. And that reminds us of an uncomfortable but important truth. Geography doesn't just shape landscapes. Geography shapes people, it shapes opportunity, it shapes who comes and who stays. The Appalachian Mountains have created an America within America, a place where If you stop 50 people on the street, nearly all of them were born on the same soil. There is nothing inherently good or bad in that, but it raises the question the entire state is facing. A question with no easy answers. When the population ages, when schools close, when hospitals lack doctors, and when the mountains are no longer strong enough to hold on to their young people, what will fill that void? And who will be the West Virginians of the future? Model.